Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to get into a really fundamental tension for product
Oh,
managers.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
one that I think every PM feels.
It's this question of how do you actually guarantee a world-class user experience? Set that quality bar, manage all the behavioral risks.
When you aren't the designer.
Exactly. You're not the one in Figma picking the fonts or the pixels, but you're still responsible. It's a huge tightrope walk.
It really is. You're sitting right at that intersection of, business needs and user needs, which means you have to be fluent in the language of design. Not to do it necessarily, but to govern it.
To steer it.
Right.
Hmm.
And our mission for you today is to give you that advanced vocabulary, the frameworks, and some really precise checklists you can use to guide your design partners, get stakeholders aligned, and just minimize that product risk before you even write a single line of code.
And we've been digging into some great source material for this. It's a professional module, actually, that's focused on training what it calls the no design PM.
I love that term.
Me too. And it gives you these high leverage tools, right? Things like quick heuristic evaluations, structured flow mapping, all the way to validation techniques, and then, crucially, writing those ironclad acceptance criteria for your engineers.
Absolutely. And we have to frame this the right way from the start.
Yeah.
A PM's contribution to UX is not about aesthetic judgment. It's not, I like blue.
No.
It's about structure. It's about clarity, user control, and fundamentally risk reduction.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at frameworks like SVPG, they talk about the 4 big risks, right?
Value, usability, feasibility, and viability.
Exactly. Is there that value? Do users want it? Usability, can they figure it out? Feasibility, can we build it? And viability, does it work for the business?
Yeah.
And mastering UX is your primary lever for tackling those first two, value and usability.
That is such a critical distinction. It's not aesthetic, it's structural.
Oh.
So, okay, let's map out our journey for this deep dive. We're going to start with the foundations, the rules of quality, the heuristics.
Yeah, the bedrock.
From there, we'll get into the process, visualizing and communicating with flows and wireframes. Then we've got a whole section on the non-negotiables like accessibility.
A huge one.
Huge. Then we'll jump into prototypes and critique for validating those risks. And we'll wrap it all up by defining what done really means with crisp acceptance criteria for that engineering handoff. All right, let's start at the very foundation. If you, as a PM, want to efficiently review a design or, spot a potential problem in a live product, you can't just rely on a gut feeling.
No, gut feelings lead to those I just don't like it conversations, which go nowhere.
Exactly. You need a checklist. You need established rules of thumb. And that's what we're talking about with usability heuristics.
This is truly the fastest way for a PM to get immediate, authoritative leverage in a design conversation. So let's just nail down the vocabulary really quick.
Usability.
That's the measurable standard. How effectively, efficiently, and with how much satisfaction a user can achieve their goals.
Okay, so that's the goal. What's the heuristic?
A heuristic is the guideline, the rule of thumb. It's not a strict law of physics, but it's derived from years and years of observation. And if you follow it, you generally get a much better solution.
And when we talk about these heuristics, these high-level design principles, there's really one list that's the default, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. It's the 10 principles from Jacob Nielsen and Rolf Molich, championed everywhere by the Nielsen-Norman Group, NN. They're basically the standard diagnostic tool for any expert inspection of a UI.
So they give you that common language.
Exactly. Moves the conversation away from taste and towards diagnosis. You're not saying this is confusing. You're saying this violates the principle of recognition versus recall. It's specific.
Right. So rather than just list all 10, let's really deep dive on the 5 that we see PMs miss the most, the ones that lead directly to, users churning or just flooding your support team with the tickets.
Great idea.
Let's start with one that seems so obvious, but it gets ignored constantly, especially in complex apps. Visibility of system status. Why is clear, timely feedback so important?
It all comes down to psychological safety. When a user clicks a button or submits a form, they create a mental expectation. And if the system doesn't immediately respond to that expectation, this little void of anxiety just opens up.
Is it working? Did my click even register? Is my internet down?
All of those things. The user immediately stops focusing on their task and starts debugging the system in their head. And that is a massive usability failure.
Can you give us an example where this fails in a subtle way, like in a heavy asynchronous environment, maybe a cloud platform?
Yeah, that's a perfect place for it to fail. Imagine you're uploading a huge data set for processing. A bad design might just show a little modal that closes when the file gets to the server, and the user thinks, great, I'm done.
But they're not done.
Not even close. The processing might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The PM has to ensure the system status covers the entire user journey. So a good solution shows a progress bar for the upload, then maybe a little saving changes spinner, then a status pill that says file uploaded, and then, this is the key part, it shifts to processing data with maybe an estimated time.
And then a final confirmation.
A final confirmation banner. Data ready, 5,400 rows imported. The PM's checklist item here is always, can the user walk away, come back in 5 minutes, and instantly, without clicking anything, know the exact status and what, if anything, they need to do next? If it's ambiguous, the system is brittle.
That really clarifies the PM's role. It's defining the whole life cycle of the task, not just that first click.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the danger of internal jargon. Match between system and the real world. Mental models.
This is the PM's constant, ongoing war against the engineering team and maybe the internal sales teams.
Every company has its own shorthand, right? ACME 100 for a customer tier, or using a word like tenants internally when your users just think of themselves as customers or members.
So the system's language, the icons, the whole flow has to match how the user already thinks the world works.
Precisely. The easy wins are things like using a shopping cart icon or a trash bin for delete. But where this gets really complex for a PM, say in a B2B SaaS tool, is in the information architecture.
How so?
Think about a CRM. Internally, your data structure might be, I don't know, organization contact opportunity. But a salesperson, their mental model is probably lead deal account.
Ah,
So if your main navigation and all your filters are organized around the internal term organization instead of the user-centric term lead or deal, you've just created instant friction. You've created a learning curve. The PM's job here is to be ruthless.
Yeah.
Validate every key term with actual users before you build and insist on their language, even if it means more work for the back end to map it.
Don't make the user learn your company's internal hierarchy. Okay, let's talk about the psychological safety net. The ability to back out. User control and freedom. I still remember accidentally deleting a really important file years ago, and just the sheer relief when that undo button popped up.
That relief isn't just a nice to have. It is a massive confidence builder. We call it the panic button principle.
Right.
If users know they can easily reverse a mistake, they explore more freely, they act with more confidence, and they're way less likely to just abandon a complicated task
Yeah.
because they're afraid of breaking something.
So if a PM is reviewing a user story for any kind of destructive action, what's the non-negotiable checklist item they have to insist on?
For any destructive action, deleting data, changing your billing plan, sending a mass email, the PM must demand one of two things. Either an immediate, super accessible undo option, like a little banner that stays for 5 or 10 seconds, or a very, very explicit confirmation dialogue, one that makes the user type the word delete or something similar before they can confirm. If your system allows a single, accidental click to permanently destroy data, it fails this heuristic and introduces an unacceptable level of risk, period.
Okay, next up, let's talk about memory. Our interfaces should not be a pop quiz. This is recognition versus recall.
Yes, this is all about minimizing the user's memory load. When you force someone to remember details from a previous screen to complete a task on the current screen, like remembering a specific product ID or a filter string, you're relying on recall. And recall is hard, it's error-prone, it's just a huge cognitive load.
A good system should just bring that information forward for you.
It should anticipate what you need. We are so much better at recognition than recall. We can recognize the right answer in a list way faster than we can recall it from scratch.
So what are some practical examples of this?
Showing recent search queries so a user can just click to rerun it.
Yeah.
Using clear labeled drop-downs instead of making someone type in some obscure code. Or if you're designing a complex filter, the system should remember the last 5 filter sets you used, or at least show you which filters are currently applied right there on the screen.
So you're not juggling things in your head between screens.
Exactly. The user shouldn't need a Post-it note to use your software.
Okay, finally, let's talk about mistakes. We touched on system status, but let's look at the philosophy behind handling errors. Error prevention versus error recovery.
A really great PM focuses on prevention first. It's about designing strong guardrails into the system.
Like what?
Like if a user needs to enter a phone number, you validate the format as they type. You don't wait for them to hit submit and then throw a big angry error message. Prevention is about using input masks, showing character limits, disabling the submit button until the form is actually valid.
But prevention is never going to be 100%. Errors will happen. So recovery is the PM's last chance to rescue that user's experience.
And it is a massive moment for building or destroying trust. A vague error, like the classic, an unexpected error occurred, is just. It's a clarity failure. It erodes confidence, and it forces the user to call your support team.
Which costs money.
A lot of money. When an error happens, the message must diagnose the problem and provide an actionable solution. It has to answer 3 questions. 1, what happened? The file upload failed. 2, why did it happen? The file size exceeds the 100 MB limit. And 3, how can I fix it? Compress the file or choose a smaller one.
That transforms a failure into a teaching moment.
Exactly. It minimizes frustration and it keeps the user in control.
Okay, so let's put this into practice. Let's say a PM runs a heuristic evaluation on a feature, and they come back with a list of, 30 issues. You can't fix everything at once. How does that PM prioritize in a way that's systematic and defensible?
Right. You have to move beyond just preference and use a quantifiable risk assessment. We classify the severity of any UX problem by looking at 3 factors that directly impact your roadmap: frequency, impact, and recoverability.
Okay, so break those down. How do you use those 3 levers to assign a priority?
Frequency is the easy one. How many users are going to hit this problem every day or every week? Impact is about the consequence. Does this issue cause data loss? Does it cost money? Does it force the user to completely abandon the task?
And recoverability.
That's the self-service measure. Can the user figure out how to solve this on their own, or they immediately get to file a support ticket or call someone?
So an issue that's high frequency, has a high impact like data loss, and is basically impossible for the user to recover from. It's a 5-alarm fire.
Precisely. And using that analysis, the source material suggests PM should classify all these issues into 3 buckets to drive their roadmap.
What are the...
First, critical. These are things that block a core user path, cause irreversible data loss, or create a security or legal failure, an accessibility violation, for instance. These must be fixed before you launch.
Okay, makes sense. What's the next level down?
Major. These are issues that significantly slow down a task or cause a lot of friction for a large number of users.
Yeah.
Like that internal jargon we talked about causing confusion. These are high priority items for your backlog.
And the last bucket?
Minor or Polish. These are things that mostly affect satisfaction or, provide a small efficiency gain. Maybe a status message disappears a second too quickly. They're good candidates for a polished sprint, but they absolutely do not block a release.
And the PM's job is to make sure those critical and major buckets are justified with that objective framework, not just because a designer wants it to be perfect.
Exactly. It's about risk, not perfection.
Okay, let's shift our mindset a little bit. We've talked about the individual rules. Let's talk about the overall experience. Companies like Intercom, who manage these hugely complex tools, they've codified a philosophy called clarity first.
Right. And the core idea is so simple, but so powerful. Complexity in powerful software is probably inevitable, but confusion is not. Clarity first is this commitment to making it instantly, overwhelmingly obvious what a screen is for, what you can do, and what you should do next.
And Intercom famously hit a wall when they were scaling. Every new feature just cluttered up their navigation and created chaos. How did designing for clarity lead them to completely rethink their information architecture?
Yeah, when products grow organically like that, the IA just becomes this messy history lesson of every feature you've ever added.
Right.
And Intercom realized they had to do a major overhaul. They simplified their main navigation, they grouped features logically based on the user's actual job to be done, and they ruthlessly surfaced the most important tasks. They reduced that cognitive load for the majority of users, but they still kept the advanced features just tucked away in secondary navigation or contextual menus.
And this whole emphasis on immediate comprehension, it boils down to 4 key questions that a PM has to be able to answer for any screen they ship.
These are absolutely essential. If you, the listener, can't answer these 4 questions within a few seconds of looking at one of your pages, you have a clarity problem.
Okay, what are they?
1, where am I? Am I on the dashboard, the settings page, invoice history? 2, what can I do here? What are the available actions? Can I upload a file, edit my profile, filter this list?
What's number 3?
3, what should I do next? What's the primary call to action? Where is this flow trying to lead me? And finally, 4, what will happen if I do it? Am I about to submit a payment, delete a file? Is the outcome predictable and clear?
And if those questions aren't answered, you have an information architecture problem, not just a visual design problem.
That's the key insight.
And this is where the friction comes in for a PM, right? Because fixing a clarity problem often means investing time in structural cleanup instead of building the next shiny feature that a customer asked for.
That is the PM's ultimate internal sales pitch. The rest of the business sees feature velocity. The PM has to be able to articulate the ROI of clarity.
So you don't go to your CEO and say, we need 3 weeks to clean up the navigation.
No, absolutely not. You say, we need to invest 3 weeks to reduce our new user onboarding time by 30% and to eliminate 15% of our support tickets that are related to the settings menu.
You lead with the measurable consequences of the lack of clarity.
Exactly. Our current IA is causing a 40% drop-off in our setup flow, which means that new high-value feature we just shipped is only being adopted by 60% of our paying customers. Clarity is a multiplier. Obscurity is a tax on everything you build.
Okay, so we've established the rules for judging UX quality. Now let's get tactical. How does a PM actually explore and communicate solutions before sinking a ton of time and budget into high-fidelity design?
This is the domain of low-fidelity tools, flows, and wireframes.
And these are the PM's secret weapon.
They really are. They belong in that problem-shaping and solution exploration phase. So after you've done your discovery and you've identified a problem, but before the detailed, expensive design work begins.
And their whole purpose is just to clarify requirements and align people.
Right. Clarify requirements, align stakeholders around a structure, and make your research findings actionable. A flow diagram is how you prove definitively that this new proposed structure fixes the drop-off we're seeing in our analytics.
All right, so let's nail down the key distinctions between the three main lo-fi tools. Let's start with the simplest one, wireframes.
Okay. Wireframes are all about structure, hierarchy, and content layout. That's it. Think boxes, lines, placeholder text. They show what is on the screen, where the main call to action is, where the secondary buttons are, where certain fields go. And the lack of polish is deliberate. It forces people to focus on function, not form.
Got it. And user flows or task flows, they shift the focus completely.
Yep. They're all about movement and decisions. They're basically just simple diagrams, boxes, diamonds for decisions, and arrows that map out the sequence of steps a user takes to complete a goal, like request a refund or invite a new teammate. They're focused on how the user moves through the system, and they don't care what the screens look like.
Which brings us to the hybrid of the two, the wire flow.
The wire flow is the perfect tool for communicating any kind of multi-step task. It combines the layout detail of a wireframe with the directional arrows of a flow. So you see these simplified screens connected by logic. They're amazing for planning out things like a sign-up flow or a checkout process.
And the power of all of these is that they're low fidelity. Why is that roughness so important, especially for the PM who's leading this discussion?
The roughness is a psychological tool, really. First, they're fast and they're cheap. You can sketch a flow on a whiteboard in 5 minutes, which encourages you to iterate and throw ideas away.
Yeah.
But second, and this is huge, they reduce bike shedding.
Ah, yes, the bike shed effect.
If you show a polished, high-fidelity mock-up to a stakeholder, what do?
Yeah.
They immediately start talking about the logo size or the shade of blue or whether the font feels modern.
And that completely distracts from the actual goal, which is verifying the structure and the flow.
Exactly. Lo-fi forces everyone to talk about the important problems. Is this the right sequence of steps? Are we missing a required field? Does this structure actually support the user's goal? It lets the PM get alignment on functionality before the design team invests days making it pixel perfect.
Now, a PM isn't just designing a new solution from scratch. They have to start by diagnosing the existing pain. So let's talk about mapping the as-is flow versus the to-be flow.
Mapping the as-is flow is a crucial diagnostic exercise. It's like forensic work for the PM. And you have to capture the messy, real-world reality of how things work today. That includes all the user workarounds, the known bugs, the dead ends. You cannot build this from memory. It has to be grounded in evidence.
And what are the key inputs for a really good as-is map?
You need both quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitatively, you look at your funnel analytics to see where the biggest drop-offs are. Qualitatively, you're looking at customer interviews, session recordings, and your support tickets to find the real pain points.
So you're annotating the flow map with that data.
You have to. You put a note on the map, 40% drop-off here, according to analytics, or users frequently call support after this step, according to support ticket data. You map everything.
That sounds like a lot of work, but I see why it's necessary.
It is, but the value for the PM is in the delta. It's the measurable gap between that painful as-is reality and the clean to-be ideal you're proposing. If your as-is flow is 6 steps long and users are abandoning it on step 3, your 2B flow has to systematically fix that specific problem.
So the 2B flow becomes the visual representation of your requirements.
And it becomes your primary communication tool. You show it to design, to engineering, to stakeholders, and it proves that your solution is addressing a real, documented problem.
So you can have a perfect structure, a heuristically sound flow, but if the actual words on the screen, the microcopy, are bad, the whole thing can just fall apart into confusion.
Microcopy is probably the most underrated lever a PM has for improving clarity and conversion. We're talking about button labels, form instructions, those little empty states, success messages, and most importantly, the error messages. It's the functional text that guides user behavior.
Why does this tiny text carry so much weight?
Because it operates in these moments of user decision or user stress. Good microcopy removes ambiguity, it increases their confidence to move forward, and it preemptively answers the questions that would otherwise turn into support tickets.
And bad microcopy just injects friction right when the user needs certainty the most.
Exactly.
So let's bring back those intercom principles we talked about, but apply them specifically to writing copy for an application.
Okay. The first and most important principle is be clear, not clever. Your users are there to achieve a goal. They're not looking for your brand's personality. They're looking for instructions.
Yeah.
So your button should say, upgrade your plan, not let's take this amazing journey to the next level.
Right, be instructional.
Instructional and predictable. Second, write for the moment. The tone has to adapt to the user's immediate context. If I'm looking at an analytics dashboard, maybe a bit of humor in an empty state is fine. But if I am in the billing flow, about to delete my payment information, the language needs to be completely sober and direct.
Okay, what else?
Third, reduce cognitive load. Use short sentences, active voice, put the action at the beginning of the sentence. Users scan interfaces, they don't read them like a book.
And that leads to the last one, action first language.
Yep, start with the verb. Upload your document. Create a new team. Confirm payment. It immediately tells the user what they can or should do.
You know what, that point about tone is really interesting. You said to avoid cute or humorous copy in critical flows. Why is that specific rule so important for PMs to enforce?
Because it's a violation of that match the system to the real world heuristic. In high-stakes moments, payments, security, deletion, a user's mental model defaults to one of certainty and professionalism. You want your bank to sound calm and factual, not like your funny friend.
So introducing humor in those moments can actually erode trust.
It can be perceived as flippant or unprofessional, and it absolutely kills trust. The PM has to define where the tone shifts based on the consequence of the action.
Okay, let's put this into practice. Let's talk about error messages again. We talked about the vague ones, but let's transform a sort of mid-tier error message into something really clear.
Okay, good idea. Let's imagine a user is submitting a form and a specific field fails because the ID they entered already exists in the system.
Okay.
So a bad error would be something like, error 409 conflict. Please review your input.
Awful. The user have to go Google what error 409 means.
Exactly. A mid-tier error might be, submission failed. The unique ID you entered already exists. So that tells you the what and the why, but not the how.
Right. It doesn't help me fix it.
So a good actionable error message would be, the team ID deep dive is already in use. Try appending your department name, like deep dive marketing, or choose one of the available suggestions below.
Ah, okay. So it diagnoses the problem and prescribes the solution.
And that's the PM's job, to audit the copy and make sure every error message transitions from being a technical report to being actionable guidance for the user.
Okay, we've laid out the principles, we've visualized the solution, now we have to verify it. We have to test its fitness for purpose and make sure it meets universal standards. And let's start with a requirement that always seems to get left to the last minute, creating just massive technical debt: accessibility, or 11Y.
Right. Accessibility is so often siloed. It's seen as some compliance task for designers or developers to check off a list. But for a PM, it has to be reframed. It is a core requirement, both functional and non-functional.
And it affects a huge number of people.
It affects 15% of the world's population, plus anyone with a temporary disability, like a broken arm or even just a situational one, like glare on your screen. So failing on accessibility isn't just bad UX, it's a serious legal and ethical risk. And it is so much cheaper to fix in the wireframe stage than after you've deployed.
The legal mandate is clear with things like the ADA. For a PM to actually govern this effectively, they need to understand the underlying framework. And that's the WCAG framework, which is built on those 4 POUR principles.
Well, these 4 principles are the PM's mental model for checking accessibility.
So let's go through them. P is for.
P is for perceivable. Can the user sense the information being presented? This covers visual, auditory, and tactile senses. The PM has to make sure information is available through more than one sense.
So what's a PM check for perceivable?
A simple one is the color contrast ratio at least 4.5 to 1 for normal text? Do all the images that convey meaning have good alt text for screen readers? Is there a transcript or captions for video content?
Okay. O is for.
O is for operable. Can the user navigate and interact with the UI no matter what input device they're using? This is mostly about keyboard access.
So the check is, can I complete the entire flow using only my keyboard?
Exactly. Can I use Tab, Enter, and Spacebar to do everything? Are the focus states, that little highlight that shows you where the keyboard is, are they visible and logical? Are the buttons on mobile big enough to be reliably tapped?
Got it. U is for.
U is for.
Yeah.
Understandable. Is the content and the operation of the system clear and predictable? This ties directly back to everything we said about clarity and mental models.
So are the instructions simple? Is the navigation consistent? When an error happens, is the solution written in plain language?
All of those things. And finally, R is for robust. Can the content be reliably interpreted by a wide range of user agents? That includes assistive technologies, both now and in the future.
And that's more of a technical check, right?
It is, but the PM has to enforce it. Are the developers using semantic HTML? Are ARIA labels, which guide screen readers, implemented correctly? Does a thing that looks like a button actually get announced as a button by a screen reader?
That brings up a common tension point. Let's talk about color contrast. A designer's brand identity might use a soft color palette that fails that 4.5 to 1 ratio. How does a PM navigate that conflict?
The PM has to lead with data and trade-offs. The answer isn't no. The answer is we can maintain the brand's aesthetic, but that specific color combination makes the text functionally illegible for a large portion of our users, and it opens us up to legal risk. We have to adhere to the standard here. We can express the brand in other ways, through imagery, through tone, but not at the expense of core legibility.
So you frame it as a non-negotiable requirement.
You have to. And you have to insist on inclusive research practices, too. The Nielsen-Norman group is very clear that you can't just simulate a disability.
Right, you need to test with real users.
The PM have to ensure that users who actually rely on screen readers or voice control software are part of your research pool. You have to see how it works in the real world with real assistive tech. That's the only way to know if you've truly succeeded.
Let's shift gears to testing our ideas rapidly and cheaply. The Silicon Valley Product Group, SVPG, makes this crucial distinction. Discovery is about building to learn, and delivery is about building to earn. Prototypes are the tools for learning.
Yes, and that word disposable is key. Prototypes are disposable representations built to test an assumption. They are not a mini version of the final product. They are a question.
And the PM has to enforce that they get thrown away after the learning is done.
If you hear a stakeholder say, "This looks great, let's just ship the prototype," that is a huge red flag. It's a smell that tells you critical validation work or feasibility work has been skipped.
And every prototype you build should be explicitly designed to test one or more of those 4 big risks from SVPG.
Right. That's the framework that keeps you focused. You're testing.
Value risk. Does anyone actually want this? Will they use it? Will they pay for it?
Usability risk.
Yeah.
Can people figure out how to use it? This is where you test your flows in microcopy.
3 and 4 are feasibility and viability.
Feasibility risk. Can we actually build this with the tech and time we have? And viability risk. Should we build it? Is it legal, ethical, financially sound? Does it fit our business strategy?
So let's talk about the fidelity of the prototype. How does that change based on which risk you're testing?
Low fidelity, we're talking sketches, paper mock-ups. That's great for testing value risk really early on. If you can't sell the basic concept on a napkin, you shouldn't waste time building it. But SVPG is very strong on this. When you get to testing usability risk, you need to use high-fidelity prototypes.
Why the insistence on high fidelity for usability testing?
Because realism matters for complex interactions. The final visual design, the exact wording on the buttons, the feel of the interaction, all of that heavily influences a user's trust and confidence and their actual behavior. Testing a checkout flow with gray boxes and placeholder text just won't tell you how a real user will react to a confusing error message.
Right. High fidelity forces you to think through all the details.
It does, and often you have to test feasibility risk in parallel. That's where you'd use a technical prototype.
Or a spike.
Exactly. A spike is built by engineering, usually with no UI at all. Its only goal is to answer a technical question. Can we process this much data in real time? Is the API for this new payment provider stable? The PM uses this to manage expectations about timelines and complexity.
And the final piece of the puzzle is proving viability, which often requires a live data prototype.
This is the ultimate test. You move from asking, do users say they will use
Okay.
it, to measuring, do users actually use it? You wire up a thin slice of the product to a small, controlled segment of your real users in production. And you measure real metrics. Does it actually increase conversion? Does it reduce churn? You're proving the business value before you commit to a full-scale launch.
And when PMs are running these usability tests with any kind of prototype, there's a golden rule. Give users tasks, not tours. How is that rule so often broken?
Oh, it's broken all the time. The moderator, who is often the PM, will spend the first 5 minutes explaining the interface, pointing out all the features. This is the new settings page. Here's the button too.
And that just invalidates the whole test.
Completely. Because in the real world, users don't get a tutorial. Instead, the PM has to set a realistic scenario and a clear goal. Don't say, what do you think of our new settings page? Say, your boss just asked you to change the monthly billing date for your team. Show me how you would do that.
And then you just shut up and watch.
You stay completely neutral. You only ask non-leading questions like, what are you thinking right now? Or what would you expect to happen if you click that?
So prototypes and flows are only as good as the feedback you get on them. Critique is vital, but it so often gets polluted by personal preference.
That is the single biggest anti-pattern the PM has to aggressively defend against. A critique meeting is not a collection of opinions. It is a focused, goal-oriented meeting to get feedback that is rooted in user outcomes, in risk assessment, or in those heuristics we talked about.
The source material we looked at recommends a daily lightweight ritual, the prototype of the day.
This little 15-minute sync between the PM, the designer, and the tech lead is non-negotiable if you want to move fast. It keeps everyone aligned, and it just compresses that learning cycle down to hours instead of weeks.
So each person brings their perspective.
The PM brings the customer context and the business goals. The designer brings the execution and the UX view. The tech lead brings the feasibility constraints. And that little triad ensures that the design direction doesn't drift off course and that technical problems are caught instantly.
But when you have to bring in the broader stakeholders for a more formal, structured critique, how do you stop that meeting from just devolving into a debate about taste?
You have to structure the session very rigidly. First, the PM or the designer sets the context. What is the goal of this flow? Which specific risk are we testing today? Then, after you walk through it, you require feedback to be delivered using a structured method, like what works, what's risky, what's unclear.
And the PM's job is to be the enforcer of evidence.
Yes. If a VP says, I think that button should be green, the PM has to counter with, that's interesting. Can you connect that concern back to a specific user goal we're trying to achieve, or what user data are you worried we're violating? You have to anchor all feedback and evidence to protect the design team from stakeholder-led design.
And the ultimate pitfall to avoid after all this work.
The fatal mistake. The ship the prototype syndrome. Prototypes, even really slick high-fidelity ones, are just smoke and mirrors. They're full of fake data and hard-coded links. They're designed to test a happy path, not to handle error space, accessibility, performance, or security. The PM has to draw a very clear line. When the learning is done, the prototype is archived, and the finalized requirements get handed off for proper delivery.
Okay, we have successfully navigated discovery. We've validated our prototype. We've gotten alignment. Now we have to translate that vision into executable instructions for engineering and QA. And this is where the PM's ability to define success using acceptance criteria is just absolutely critical.
The handoff is where the rubber meets the road. As that no-design PM, your job is to make sure engineering knows not just what the screen looks like, that's the design file, but how the system must behave under all conditions. The happy path, the sad path, all the edge cases. And that is all captured in the acceptance criteria, or ACs.
We often talk about a documentation hierarchy. Where do ACs fit into that whole handoff stack?
They sit at the most granular executable level. The PM has to coordinate this whole stack. At the top, you have the PRD, or the epic, which is the high-level goals, the business case, the why.
Right.
Then you have the design artifacts, your Figma file, that's the look. And at the bottom, you have the delivery tickets in Jira, which contain the ACs. And that is the behavior. The ACs are the objective translation of design intent into engineering reality.
And it's really important to distinguish ACs from the definition of done, or DoD. They're often confused.
They are. The definition of done is a universal checklist that applies to every single story the team works on. Things like code has been peer-reviewed, automated tests are passing, documentation has been updated.
It's team-level quality control.
Exactly. The ACs are the specific criteria for the individual story that must be met to satisfy the user's need. An AC might be the search bar must autocomplete after the user types 3 characters. The DoD just ensures that work is done cleanly and securely.
So the clarity of those ACs is directly correlated with the quality of the final product. What makes an acceptance criterion truly crisp and effective?
It has to have a few strict qualities. It must be clear, unambiguous, simple language. It must be verifiable. A QA tester can objectively say pass or fail. It has to be outcome-focused, describe the user outcome, not the implementation details. And this is the hard part. It has to be complete enough. It has to cover the happy path, the key edge cases, and the critical non-functional requirements.
And the most common failure I see is when PMs write these vague aspirational ACs.
It is a constant battle against subjective adjectives. You have to ruthlessly kill criteria like the interface should be intuitive, or my personal favorite, the page should load quickly.
Not testable, they're feelings.
They are feelings. Yeah. You have to replace them with measurable standards that you agree on with engineering during backlog refinement.
Okay, so give me a specific example. How do you translate a subjective goal like that into a measurable AC that an engineer can actually build and a tester can actually test?
Let's take the new product filter should perform well. Subjective. A crisp, measurable AC would be, on a simulated 4G mobile network connection, when a user applies 3 filters at the same time, the resulting product list must update in under 500 milliseconds for 95% of requests.
Wow, okay. So that defines the experience using 3 clear variables: the environment, the action, and the measurable result.
Exactly. It's unambiguous.
Now, for simple things, a bullet point list of ACs is probably fine, but for really complex UX flows with branching and decision points and error states, a simple list just falls apart.
It does. And that's where you need the power of scenario-based criteria. Usually we use the Gherkin format. Given, when, then.
And Gherkin is the gold standard for this.
It is. It's the best way to define behavioral outcomes, especially for all those negative paths and edge cases we've been talking about. It forces precision by defining the starting state of the system, given, the user action that happens when, and the required observable system response then.
Okay, let's use the classic complex flow. A failed payment attempt. We have to make sure the system handles this gracefully, covering both user error and system error.
Excellent example. Let's define the user error first. Say, insufficient funds.
Okay.
The AC would look like this. Scenario. Failed payment insufficient funds. Given the user is on the checkout page with valid items in their cart, and they input a credit card that has insufficient funds, when they click complete purchase, then the system must display an inline error message that says, payment declined, insufficient funds, please try a different card.
And it shouldn't lose their data.
Right. And the user remains on the payment page with all their input data preserved. And this is the crucial viability check.
Yeah.
And no order is created in the database.
So now let's use Gherkin for a technical failure, like the payment gateway timing out. That needs a totally different recovery plan.
A scenario that is so often missed. If the gateway API times out, you can't treat the user the same way. So, scenario. Payment gateway timeout. Given the user attempts to complete a payment, when the payment gateway fails to respond within 10 seconds, then the system displays an error like, we're having connectivity issues with our payment provider. Please try again in a few moments.
And you'd want to add some UX guardrails there, too.
You have to, so you'd add. And the system prevents the user from double-clicking the purchase button while it's retrying. And the system initiates a background check to confirm no duplicate order was accidentally created.
That's amazing. You just use one scenario to define a critical functional requirement, no duplicate orders, and a non-functional UX requirement, preventing the double-click.
Exactly. And the PM must also integrate those other non-functional requirements we talked about, like accessibility and performance, right into the ACs for the story.
So if the story is about adding a new filter panel, what would an accessibility AC look like in Gherkin?
It would have to be specific and testable. So, scenario, filter control accessibility. Given a keyboard-only user is on the product page, when they navigate to the new filter panel, then all filter controls, the checkboxes, the sliders, the buttons, are traversable using the tab key in a logical order. And the screen reader correctly announces the current state of each filter, like size filter currently set to large.
And that makes accessibility a concrete, verifiable expectation for QA, not just some vague guideline.
And makes it part of the definition of done for that story.
So once the ACs are drafted, reviewed, aligned on with engineering and QA, how does the PM make sure that handoff is clean and effective?
You have to prioritize minimizing overhead. Developers don't want to hunt for information. The best practice is to make the development ticket, your Jira card, your Trello card, the single source of truth for execution.
Everything in one place.
Everything. The PM makes sure that ticket has the link to the specific approved Figma frames, and it has the detailed acceptance criteria written directly in the description. This tells engineering what to build, and it tells QA what to test. And here's the final check. If your QA person cannot write their test cases directly from your ACs without asking you a bunch of clarifying questions, then your ACs are not crisp enough, and that story is not truly ready for development.
Wow. This has been a really extensive deep dive into how a product manager can move from just, a feature list mentality to truly mastering the structural and behavioral requirements of a great user experience.
We've really established that the PM's unique power is in driving clarity, not in having great aesthetic taste. And you achieve that by systematically reducing those four big risks: value, usability, feasibility, and viability, using frameworks like Nielsen's heuristics, visualizing the journey with flows, and defining success with measurable, outcome-focused acceptance criteria.
And that good UX is just inherently cheaper when you define it and you validate it early. We learned that accessibility isn't some optional compliance layer, it's a core risk reduction exercise, and that those lo-fi tools are strategic weapons for alignment and for cheap, rapid learning.
The entire structured process we've walked through is built to prevent the single most expensive mistake you can make: committing to production code before you are absolutely certain you have a solution that is usable, valuable, and viable.
And that brings us full circle, really, to that idea we talked about with prototyping, using the prototype as the core specification.
Right. When you have a high-fidelity prototype that has been fully validated against all four of those risks, it essentially becomes the definitive answer for the engineering team about how the product should look, feel, and interact.
So if your validated high-fidelity prototype truly is the spec for the look and feel, and your detailed acceptance criteria define all the functional and non-functional behavior,
It raises a really crucial and I think provocative question for you to consider as you go back and streamline your own process. How much long-form, traditional written documentation, beyond those ACs and the link to the prototype, do you truly need to satisfy the usability, viability, and feasibility risks before you ship? Is that traditional PRD structure still serving you, or has it become bureaucratic overhead?
a vital question to take back to your team. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time.